Hey there, guitar fanatics. Here we are again. You know, when you're learning how to solo, it can be so easy to get overwhelmed. There are so many directions you could take it, so many different schools of thought. And one of the biggest things I see from players struggling to solo is they almost overlearn things like scales and arpeggio patterns, but they don't really have any idea how to turn those techniques into legitimate melodic statements. Well, here's where this video is going to help you. I've spent years studying players. You know, those guitarists whose names always come up when great players are asked who their favorite guitar players are. Today, I'm going to show you 3 techniques that these players use all the time. They're easy to learn, they're easy to implement, and yet they work so well you can actually build the foundation of your entire soloing style around them. So what do you say we jump right in and play some guitar? So for these 3 techniques we're going to learn today, we're going to use a couple of tools that intermediate and advanced guitarists should already have under their fingers. And we're going to use them in ways that I hope are pretty different and a lot more musical. And we're not going to be talking any theory except what applies directly to the licks that we're going to be putting together. We're going to start off with a cool triad hack, then learn an awesome trick with pentatonic scales, and then one more killer triad application. But I'm not going to just teach you a couple of scales on arpeggios and leave you hanging. I'm going to show you how to use these things to play amazing sounding melodic solo ideas. And these tools will always work for you because they're very technically sound. So let's get into solo hack number 1. Soloing hack number 1 involves a fantastic little trick with triads. We're going to take a triad, add 1 or 2 other notes to it, and play what we call pedal point licks. Now, even if you're not familiar with the concept of pedal point licks, you hear players use them all the time. One of the most famous is this one from the introduction of Cliffs of Dover. And the concept is building a lick around a pedal note, which is nothing more than a note that we continuously go back to. So in that famous Cliffs of Dover lick, Eric Johnson plays the G at the 15th fret of the high E string, and then goes back and forth between that note and the notes of the D triad at the 19th fret and the C triad at the 17th fret of the B, G, and D strings. Pretty awesome sounding, right? So there's a freebie for you. But we're going to take the concept of this lick and we're going to change it slightly so we're not just ripping it off. And we're going to use it in a way that's a little simpler and maybe illustrates the point I'm trying to make with you even better. That G on the high E string sits in a G major triad shape along with the notes D and B, which are at the 15th and 14th fret of the high E, B, and G strings. And right around that little triad shape, there are other key notes of the G major scale that aren't in the triad, but that we can use as part of our pedal point sequence to make up great licks. Let's play the F sharp and the E at frets 19 and 17 of the B string along with that G note. And then that's going to bring us to the D at the 15th fret, which is one of the notes of the triad. But we're not going to stop there. There's a C note at the 17th fret of the G string. And 1 fret below that is a B, which is also part of our triad. Playing that all in sequence, we get this sound. And we could finish that lick by bending the B up to C and back and putting some nice vibrato on it. Now that's a legitimate guitar lick that you folks could use in so many situations and styles of music. Let's try another one, still in the key of G. If we drop down to the 12th fret, we've got a G major triad on the 12th fret of the D, G, and B strings. And what if we pedal on that D note on the D string? We're going to play then 3 notes on the G string, G, A, and B at frets 12, 14, and 16. Well, that sounds great. Now let's start with the G note on the G string, and we're going to play 3 notes on the B string, and the B note, the C note, and the D note. Those are at frets 12, 13, and 15. It's another great sounding little pattern. So let's add a little phrasing and spruce those licks up. We could slide into the last note of each sequence and put some vibrato on it. Or we could maybe bend into the highest note of each lick, release the bend, and then return to the lowest note we played on the same string like this. Now, either of those two licks can stand alone as a statement, or we could play them back to back like we just did. Or what if we combine those two licks with our first lick and we get something like this? Let me put that together for you real quick over a backing track. I think you might be hearing now what I meant in the introduction when I said these licks are so sound that you can start to build your whole style around them. I hear this technique used all the time by perhaps the most recorded guitarist in the last 40 years, and that's Steve Lukather. This guy has played on over 1,500 records, and one of the big reasons is he became famous for being able to walk into the studio, get handed a piece of music that he'd never heard before, and then very quickly lay down a great sounding solo on the first or second take. A big part of why he was able to do that is a major part of his style is these triad-based licks. And that's because they always work if you play them over the right chord. And now you might be thinking, okay, that works on major, but what about minor chords? Okay, so we're playing in G major. Let's go to the relative minor, E minor. And there's an E minor triad at the 12th fret of the E, B, and G strings. Let's use the B note as our pedal tone. And we're going to use the E, F sharp, and G notes at frets 12, 14, and 15 of the E string. And put that together a little more smoothly. It sounds like this. Now there's also an E minor triad at frets 16, 17, and 15 of the G, B, and E strings. Well, let's use this E as our pedal tone, and we're going to add the G note, A note, and B note at frets 15 and 17 and 19 of the high E string. So over a chord change like E minor to G, we could use these licks to play something like this. This would be over E minor. And then over our G chord, we could use our first pedal tone lick. Let me play that smoothly over a backing track. You can get so much mileage out of this type of lick. Over that last example, I was using the same concept for all three licks, but changing the notes and the phrasing around just enough. You don't get the feeling that I'm doing the same thing over and over. These kinds of ideas are guitar soloing gold. And they're the kinds of concepts that pro players perfect because they know that they can rely on it to always sound good when they need it. Now, I could go on about this forever. If you want to learn more about it, come on over to my Patreon page where we go deeper into all the topics that we discuss on YouTube. And for now, let's get on to soloing hack number 2. Soloing hack number 2 is using both the major and minor pentatonic scales with the same root note. Let's say we're going to be soloing over a classic rock kind of thing that goes back and forth between a G chord and a C chord. Yeah, kind of like that. Over that kind of a groove, I might play licks that sound something like this. Now, what I played just now is all pentatonic scales, but I played two different pentatonic scales to get distinctly different sounds. I started off with G major pentatonic, which gives a country tinged or southern rock kind of a sound. And then I switched to G minor pentatonic, which I think sounds very bluesy and more aggressive. Now I find almost everyone learns minor pentatonic first. And the first pattern of G minor is here at the 15th fret, and it looks like this. But you may not know that to get major pentatonic, all we have to do, drop down 3 frets to the 12th fret, play the same pattern. And we can do that with any of the 5 pentatonic boxes and also with any pentatonic lick we can come up with. Take a bluesy sounding lick like this. I'm going to play frets 18 and 15 on both the high and B strings. Go back to the 15th fret of the G string and then bend fret 18 of the B string up to match the G note we just played. Cool bluesy lick, right? But we can drop it down 3 frets, play frets 12 and 15, or 15 and 12 on both the E and B, hit the 12th fret of the E string, and then bend that 15th fret of the B string up to the same note. And what previously sounded bluesy using minor pentatonic now sounds like a major lick Dickie Betts might have used in an Allman Brothers song. Now you can hear John Mayer use this in his soloing all the time, and also heavier players like Slash. Eddie Van Halen did it all the time in his solos, and Eric Clapton was a master at it back in his days in the band Cream. Check out their classic version of the song Crossroads. It's all over the place. Now try this to really ingrain this concept. Start off practicing like this. Play on 2 strings at a time, but work through the entire major and minor pentatonic patterns. Starting with G minor, we're going to play frets 18 and 15 of the E and B strings, then drop down and play frets 15 and 12. On the B and G strings, go back to minor, play frets 18, 15, and 17, 15. Drop down to major and play frets 15, 12, and 14 and 12. And then take it through those entire patterns. You take it through those entire patterns and you're going to start to get it under your fingers and in your ears. Once you're familiar with where to find the notes, start combining short patterns into licks. Here's one going from major to minor on the E and B strings. And then we can also reverse that, play minor first, slide down to major, and finish it off. I talked about players earlier, and this is another concept that they use to get pretty much unlimited mileage out of. Not only does it sound great, but that major to minor transition trick, well, it effectively doubles all the pentatonic licks you know instantly. Here's one more playing a longer scale type run. I start off with major and I play the notes on the E, A, and D strings. And then I'm going to slide into the 17th fret of the D string, which will put us in position to play minor. Now we're going to do a little sequence. We're going to end up at the 15th fret of the E string, and then we're going to slide down to the 12th fret and play down the major pattern. And we can practice that just playing the scale. So here's 6 notes in major. Slide up, do 8 notes in minor. And then slide down and we'll have 5 more major notes. Get smooth moving back and forth between the patterns, and then you can start to add in variations in sequencing and phrasing. Switching between major and minor pentatonic in the same licks and phrases is another killer concept that, like I said, you can get nearly unlimited mileage out of. And it's another cornerstone in the styles of those players. Soloing hack number 3 is another triad idea. And it's linking together different triad shapes using the suspended second and the suspended fourth. Now, you've all heard this kind of thing a million times. Here's a G chord with a suspended second or an A note. And here's a G chord with a suspended fourth or a C note. We've also heard it used like this. That's the suspended fourth and second of a D chord. But we can also use those same two notes in conjunction with triads to create great sounding 4-note guitar licks. I like to add the fourth to descending licks, and it sounds like this. So we're going to be adding a C note to the D, B, and G of our triad, and it sounds like this. And I like to add the second, which is A, to ascending licks, and it would sound like this. And as you can see by what I just played, we can use this technique to chain the shapes together and pretty much cover the entire fretboard if we want to. This concept is a favorite of David Gilmour, who is the definition of a player's player. Check out the beginning of the solo to Comfortably Numb, and you'll hear him play these kind of licks over both the D chord and the A chord. Over D, he starts off on F sharp, which is the major third, bends it up to that suspended fourth. He drops down to A, and he bends the suspended fourth up to the fifth, releases down to that fourth, and plays the rest of the triad. And now, here's where this is really going to get fun. And this goes to what I said about building an entire soloing style with these techniques. You can make up the bulk of your solos just mixing and matching all these different concepts. And not only are there 3 different concepts to use, but think about all the unlimited variation and licks that you could come up with. We've got all the different triad shapes, all the different pentatonic boxes, but we've also got all those combinations of major and minor. Let me give you a simple example that you can play over that G to C backing track. Let's start off with a pedal point lick at the 15th position on the E and B strings, and the D note at fret 15 of the B string is our pedal. Play G and A at frets 15 and 17 of the E string, and bend that A up to B and release it back down and finish on G. And now let's do a descending lick with our suspended notes. We're going to play D, C, B, G, but we're going to bend the C up to D for some nice phrasing. And let's play on down, and we're going to stop at the B note of the 14th fret of the G string. Now we're in position to play a lick from pattern 1 of G minor pentatonic. So let's play a bluesy lick. Now this lick ends on the B flat at fret 15 of the G string. From there, we're going to drop down to the 12th fret to go major. And we're going to play frets 14 of the G and D string and finish with frets 12, 14, and 12 of the G string. Let's put it all together. It's pedal point, suspended note lick, blues, major. A little bit smoother, here it is over our backing track. So I hope you got a lot out of this video. If you really apply yourself to these three concepts and explore all the variations of different licks and phrases that are possible, you'll never run out of great sounding soloing ideas. Now go check out this video, which has some other really good ideas to expand your lead guitar playing, and I'll see you soon.